Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, in my continuing saga on Michael Aquino, military officer and Temple of Set founder, I did find some information online that I pass on. Remember, this is online. It's hard to verify what the real story is. Same old story, but you got to get information where you can get it because you can't really go to anybody that's going to give you information. You email them and you really never hear from them again. They're not going to give you information. So you have to kind of piece these things together. Now, this comes from a place called controversial.com/Michael A. Aquino. And he's got a whole bunch of things on metaphysics and witchcraft and other things, so he seems to be some sort of occultist. So that information may be a little better than others if he talks about that. We're not really getting into that, but it's written and compiled by George Knowles. That's a fairly big site. Now, I don't know his credibility whatsoever, but I'm going to pass on some of this stuff, which I think is interesting. It has some information on his father here, Michael Aquino Sr. Had a sergeant, has been a sergeant in Patton's Third Army during World War II, serving with distinction and was decorated with a Purple Heart for wounds received during combat. I don't know if that's true or not. I looked at his birth date, and he would have been he would have been in his early 30s when that happens. Maybe if you were talking about 1942, 3, 4, 5, whatever that may be. It seems a little old to me. But the average age in World War II was 26, compared to Vietnam, which was 18, which I think is very interesting. So it's possible, but I don't know how we verify any of that. And again, do you want to spend hours looking that up? Just some tidbits, and he's never mentioned that. As a matter of fact, he never talks about his father at all, or I should say very minorly. He doesn't talk about any kind of course, he doesn't talk that much about his mother either, but has brought her up as being a genius, being this great artist, etc. And it's very interesting that she was learning art in the 1930s in Berlin. Now, there's always a Nazi contact with his family. They seem to be connected with Germany a lot. Why you would go for art in Berlin, I don't know, especially if you had the money to do that. And apparently, his mother came from a wealthy family as well. You think he'd go to Paris or some other place, but, this was at troubled times in the 1930s. So she was over there doing whatever, and apparently even ran into Hitler or had some sort of communication with him. So there's some sort of love there for that or something going on. Again, just odd things, but Aquino has this bizarre fantasy reality of what he thinks Nazism, like a lot of Americans do. They've been glorified as just being a military people when they were basically barbaric murderers who failed at all their military campaigns and went through Europe murdering people, not to mention the 12 million that were murdered in general with Heinrich Himmler, who was a failed chicken farmer, that little weasel. And of course, none of the SS fought to the death, even though they were told to. They all surrendered, or I should say, took their uniforms off and surrendered to the Americans. So this is it. But I thought it would end. I don't know where he got that from or where that, but I'm going to read all of Aquino's books, and I'll report on every single one of them. And he has a quasi autobiography, and I don't know what's in there, but I am going to report on that and come back. So this is, and I'd like to get a little more information. The problem with this autobiography that he wrote with Webb, who took over the Temple of Set for a while, Don Webb, was it? Took over the Temple of Set after he retired for a while, is that, obviously they're only going to put in things there that they want. Now, how much of it is factual, I don't know. You think that Aquino would have mentioned that his father was a sergeant in Patton's army, considering he also wrote speeches for Patton's children who joined the military. Which, again, does that make sense that in time elements there? I don't know. It sounds a little fishy to me. His mother's name, which I mentioned as before, and there are corrections here, so I want to just get everything straight. His mother was known as Betty Ford, as a kind of a slang term, and I'm not sure why. Her real name is Marion Dorothy Elizabeth Ford, and I think some people call Elizabeth's Betty's. It says here, affectionately known as Betty Ford, and we're not talking about the wife of the goofball president. And we have mentioned that she apparently joined or went to Stanford at 14 years old and graduated at 17, which must be a very cultural shock. So there's something going on there, but there's more than that. And we're offering here, and you should see with this as you watch the flashes here, we do have some rare photos of his mother in older age and also as a child here. So do watch that, and we have a few other interesting photos that seem to be rare that this guy dug up, this George Knowles, which sounds familiar to me. I think he's been involved in things. We do have a picture of his first wife, Janet. Now, this is where I made a mistake, and I think other people have said that, is that apparently his son, and who is called Dorian here instead of Damien, so I don't know if that's his real name, Dorian, or is it Damien? We don't know. I would think Damien would fit. I mean, you got to remember, this guy is a complete goofball. I'm surprised he didn't name his son Lucifer. But that's, I guess, the closest thing to it. And he believes that the movies, there was a trilogy of movies. What is the name of those now? Escape me right now, but he claims that the priest in those movies was picked because it looks a lot like him or some character in the Damien's movies. And Gregory Peck starred him. I can't remember, but he claims so. That character was modeled after him, and the person even looked like him. Which is interesting here. But his first wife was named Janet, and as I've mentioned, it has been stated that she was a Mormon. But she was, and what's interesting with his mother, let's go back there. She was an ordained priest in the Temple of Set. So, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, as it says. So apparently mother supported him at a very high level, his work, and was actually a priestess in the church, just like his first wife. So these are all people, and of course, that's what people should do. It's amazing how many people over the years that I've worked with don't have people that are interested and they're interested. They were occult scientists, and they married people that had no interest in that whatsoever. Well, I mean, that's going to cause problems, and of course, you don't have much to share there. So I'm always amazed how those things are, how people segment their lives. Can't really understand that. But she, Janet, apparently was a priestess in the Church of Satan and then became a priestess in the actual Temple of Set. So was his, and that's the mother of his child, Damien or Dorian, apparently. Apparently he didn't have any children with Lilith, which is not her name. What is her name here? Her actual name. Well, her last name is Sinclair. I'm trying to find her first name. And in 1986, a year after her death, he married this Lilith woman. And apparently, they didn't have a child together. It's from the first wife, Janice. But I'm not sure because we can't really find anything on his child, either Dorian or Damon, or any record of it. And apparently, if this was his mother, Lilith, she never even notified him of his father's death, which tends me to believe that most likely she wasn't his mother. She was his stepmother. So, because if she was her mother, you think she'd have a little better. But there seems to be no communication there, so it comes from other sources, which we just don't really know. These other sources get stuff from court systems and other hearsay. They really don't verify anything of what we really know about that. even though this source does claim that he spoke with his son and he couldn't say anything because of pending legal action. Because Aquino just died a few years ago, so apparently this is still pending. We don't know. So these are the little corrections, and of course he became a barony of Scotland, which he bought, and other things. It really doesn't mean anything. I'm not sure what that's all about. He likes titles and all sorts of things because that's what he's done from childhood. He got all these titles in the Boy Scouts, becoming an Eagle Scout, got all these titles in the military. And, of course, he continues to do that. And I'm assuming his mother, Ford, is a Scottish, British name, and there may be some ancestry based there. Yet, as I said, we still don't have much information on anything. We don't see, she wrote a lot of poetry, and he has republished some of that. There is no showing of any artwork, sculptures, other things that she was supposed to be so good at. We don't know what she did, and I don't know if the estate she left was a estate that she got from her parents or something that she was able to accumulate over her life. We just don't know with any of that. I'm not entirely sure, but needless to say, in 1985, he had assets of over $3 million. I don't know how much income they were generating. I don't know if he sold property, but he certainly has been able to live well in expensive real estate areas, and talks about getting classic cars. But, he had an officer's salary, and they make good money. Don't think the military is paid poorly, particularly the officers, and they have numerous benefits and all sorts of things that you get as an officer. So this person has never been financially problematical through his life. I don't know if he necessarily needed mommy's money, but this certainly is a chunk of change, and we don't know what happened with anything else and what his father, saying that his father was an investment broker is meaningless. That could be anything. That alludes to a stockbroker, and did he make money there or not? We just don't know. He obviously was living in two expensive places, Santa Barbara, where we grew up in, which has always been an expensive town for the elite, and of course San Francisco is similar. So we just don't know, and hopefully we'll hear from his son, whatever his name is, Damien or Dorian. We'll see how that actually goes in the future, and once he settles his case, he may be upset enough to come out and talk about his father in different areas. Or he may be a trust fund baby. He may not have been left an estate. He may have been left a trust fund, which he draws on as long as he shuts up, or whatever the agreements are there. We don't know. We don't know what he does. We don't know anything. It appears, though, that the child is from his first wife, not Lilith. But we don't know entirely with that either. So we have to figure out the time frames there and everything else. And I'm not going to really spend the time doing all that. I'm not really interested in that. It's just, it's nice to know where this guy is coming from. It is interesting to know that he had one child that he never talks about, that he apparently is estranged from. Now, he could have told the kid, and if they had a good relationship, that, hey, stay out of this, it's dangerous, etc. And that would make sense to me on all sorts of levels. But he seems to have stepped out of the entire organization, it appears. And there's no mention of him whatsoever, apparently, anywhere, except in some court document that this guy apparently dug up. So the bottom line is that we just don't know there. If there was a good relationship there, he would have been in contact with his stepmother, who would have told him of the passing of his father, or if that is his mother, the same thing. But he was told nothing. Nobody was given any information, and he was cut out of the main will, apparently. So there is bad feelings here. Will this trigger an expose from him? As I said, it depends. I mean, he hasn't come out this far, but of course, maybe he didn't want to do anything while people are alive. Apparently, Lilith is still alive in her 80s, and he may not want to do anything again because they have the purse strings. So everybody's trying to figure out what's going on here in terms of this, and I don't know if this means anything in the bigger picture or not. We're just trying to put the pieces together and correct any misstatements, because all of this stuff, and we don't know if any of this stuff printed by this Knowles guy is right or not. But we do want to keep on top of it. I'm very interested in reading his autobiography that he's written based on, in a bizarre way. Some reason he wanted to rate his life or go through his life by the cars he's owned, because apparently he's a big car nut, and he's owned a lot of very elite sports cars, Ferraris, Lotuses, and these type of things. And he talks about his life when he owned these kind of cars. An interesting way to approach it, and I guess that is a way. I mean, if you look at your life, you probably go through different stages, especially if you have a lot of money, where you have different cars. But that's the way he's written it, and he's written it with Don Webb. He's also got several other books, even some goofy books, semi-comedies, parodies, which he claims are not really supposed to be amusing, but are parodies, and some whatever political statements are in there. He does all have his Mind War series. I think there's 3 or 4 books in there, which he talks about all the different techniques. He also claims that he's put in these books, and I'm not sure which ones. I think these Mind War books are not just informational in terms of data about the intelligence that he's done, the PSYOPs. They seem to be books that talk about ways of manipulating, controlling people. And he claimed to somebody who put that somewhere, I don't remember, that his books state everything that he knows, and he wanted to leave it that way. So these are great resources to figure out what this guy is thinking about and what he is doing. I mean, we have to be careful here to give this guy any credit whatsoever, even on an intellectual basis. I mean, to think that the Church of Satan is some high ground of intellectual thought is above amusement. The fact is that this is just really a statement. I don't know why he's so angry at the world in general, coming from a rich, pampered family growing up in Beach Boy land of Santa Barbara, dude, where it's an idyllic situation of beaches, tennis courts, and colleges in a very upper class place that Santa Barbara was, particularly when he was there. So I don't know what he needs to have that, and how he then all of a sudden is in San Francisco. Being so close to the Church of Satan is another move he made, I guess, after his graduation. And of course he was stationed up there at the Presidio. So we just don't know of all of this stuff, but we'll find out more things. As I said, I think nobody's ever quoted a single thing out of his autobiography, which I find very interesting, that all these people that want to attack him, all these people that say he's involved in stuff, have never done that. The same thing with the Process Church, which has written a book on their sanctuary, and there are several other books. Nobody ever quotes in these books anything. So, which I think is very interesting. And of course, what are we going to find in these books? Well, I think we can find a lot of personal data. Maybe we can connect some dots here to find out where this guy was. I mean, he's going to talk about where he was stationed, what he was doing, and how much of this is true or not. Well, it's a point. It's a point to start at. One of the things that's curious about him in general is the fact: is it common for an army colonel in the PSYOPs to be working so much with the bigger picture? Shouldn't he be doing PSYOP work? Why is he at Area 51? Why is he working with the CIA? Is that common for a lieutenant colonel to be working with these people? Well, I can understand banging into them, having some things, but he seems to have. And what is he doing at Area 51? Which I think I misstated a little bit. He said that the advance, and which shows you that maybe he is lying. He stated that the advancements that we have made with these faster than light, which he has agreed is just a joke, and that faster than the speed of light is easy to obtain, and that the technology to do this comes from here, from our people and our scientists, and we have figured it out. It didn't come from any extraterrestrial information, which shows you he may be out of the loop. He also may have been out of the loop and appears to be out of the loop, unless they're hiding it, in the whole remote viewing, which went on for a long time in the military. He is never mentioned by the remote viewers. Why wasn't he? Wasn't this his area? He was everywhere else. I tend to think something's being hidden there. So why wasn't the Stargate and all the other, I forget all the names they had for those programs, why wasn't he involved with it? Why wasn't he at SRI? He's been everywhere else talking with those people there. Is this a big cover-up? Well, I find it hard to believe, and I don't think that the SRI people have ever been directly questioned of the fact that, did Michael Aquino ever show up and talk to you and find out what's going on? Now, Aquino does write how he thinks all psychic powers are worthless, and they looked into it, and all of it was a joke, and the whole Stargate program was a joke, and the remote viewing was a joke. Well, that's not what any of the people who participated in it had stated. As a matter of fact, they have a very high success rate. So they claim. Where was Aquino in all of these things? Because he's never mentioned. And, of course, SRI is in, Stanford? That's Northern California again. That's not that far from San Francisco. So the whole idea is that he's in that area. He went to Echelon, which supposedly had all the Russian documents that were coming out of Russia at that time, talking about their research into psychic powers and other things. And these have been translated, and apparently he spent time reading it. I mean, he's everywhere. And I can understand going there and reading that stuff. It seems like he had a lot of freedom, that he was moving around everywhere. And this starts to add into the question factors, is why has he been spotted, or people claim he's everywhere? Well, the way he's operating, he certainly could have. I don't know. It seems like he could have been transferring. He is a high-ranking officer, but you think he would be stationed someplace and doing some kind of work. Now, hopefully his autobiography will tell us more of that, but you could just jump around anywhere you want to go. Well, at his rank, maybe you can. Maybe that's what colonels do. But as a basic PSYOPs colonel, is that somebody who is sought out by the CIA and the NSA and everyone else? He does not claim he worked for the NSA. He claimed he worked for other intelligence groups as well as the CIA. So is that what they do? Is that who they're working with? Well, quite possibly, but I do find that a little bit odd. But if it is the truth, he's all over the place, and that means there are military bases in every square inch of the United States. If he can jump around, it means he can jump anywhere, here and there, clandestinely, because he can take military transport wherever he wants to go, which I'm assuming trying to get those records of who was on what flight for military personnel to one base to the other would probably be near impossible to clarify. So that's one of the things that, of course, we are looking into, and we'll find out in his work and what he talks about in general. I mean, this is a very strange guy, and this is a very strange organization. And I detected from his personal interviews from 2019, a few years before his death, a very nasty aspect to him. A violent, nasty opinions. So this isn't some meek person. I mean, you don't become a military officer, go through special forces training being meek milquetoast. So there's a lot more to this guy than we really know, and he keeps saying how, and they all do this, which is kind of amusing. So did the 1st Earth Battalion guy, whose name I always forget. Oh, we're trying to not fight. So, he always says this, and he's looking, his statements are, I'm trying to find ways, that's why I went into PSYOPs, so you can do things that don't involve violence. All of these things are kind of jokey. This is a military, that's your job. It's the bottom line with the military is you're there to kill people. That's what you're for. That's what war is about. So what he's doing with all that, we don't know. And there's misstatements. Apparently he was in Vietnam for only a year, which is kind of strange, but I don't know what the normal time for officers in Vietnam was in general. But all these things bring up the same old questions and so forth. Can we find answers here? What's going on in the bigger picture? And what was, the problem is finding out what the Temple of, what he did, because you can't really say what the Temple of Set is doing. You've got, and I'm going to be going over them and looking into the past leaders. Don Webb is a famous guy. He's written books on, and I've read a couple, which were really pretty piss poor. The person running the Temple of Set now, from what I can tell, is apparently some sort of professor, a female black professor based in Berkeley, California, which of course makes sense because this is where, very odd people end up and are able to stay. So the latest thing there is what she was doing was researching in ancient Egypt to find connections to Set in general and what they were doing in the old cults. So that's what their emphasis at this particular time is. And of course, the organization is still running, and I don't know what all the process is there, but like all these places, they've never had that many. I mean, he may be relatively well known, but none of these organizations have thousands and thousands of members. They usually have a few hundred, which are scattered all over the world. That's very common, and we just don't know. So I will keep you posted as I read these other books. I will pick out important points to them of the way that he thinks, what his point is. And as I said, his autobiography should give us lots of insights into his life, hopefully. So he claims his life is so exciting, so amazing that nobody would believe it. So he's decided to write it in this kind of odd fashion. But certainly, this should give us insights, and since no one else has gone out and do anything really, which is called research, they basically talk to other people that say, yeah, it was like this, it was like that, yeah. It's a bunch of gossip and hearsay with virtually no way of proving it. And if somebody writes a book or makes a statement or puts something up on the internet, well, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, you can use it with a grain of salt and say, yeah, that's what someone is saying. But where did they get their information from? And nobody will contact you. Well, where did you get your information from? Where did you actually get that information on that particular situation? I may write to this Knowles guy about his father, not his father, but Aquino's father serving in the military. Well, where did you get that information from? So it would be nice to have a little bit of feedback from these people to find out, where are you getting this from? And a lot of it is just somebody writes it in a book. And the internet, people say the internet's no good. Well, is a book any better? Oh, the books are better because they're printed, because they're physical. Well, the point is that what's in most books is not any more valid than the internet. Now, there is a problem with books because you then become a target to be sued, and people can sue the publisher. So you think that there's a little more fact-checking going on. Well, of course, you can do that on the net as well, but there's so much on the net, apparently most people don't follow through with that. If something's in print and somebody is printing it, meaning a company or a publisher, well, that's somebody with big pockets you can go after and take their money. So all of that is a part and parcel of what is actually going on. It's the validity of everything is always in question, and you just don't know. It's hearsay. It's people's opinion. I've heard things that is unbelievable. People have no idea, and they like to believe, yeah, my buddy told me. Your buddy is an idiot. He doesn't know anything. And most likely wants to sound like he's special. I know what's going on. Well, you don't know what's going on. And it's as simple as that. And they don't have the brains or the background to make judgments on information if they're correct or not. So it's just hearsay. It's just opinion. And a lot of it is just mucked up nonsense. As I've said, I've found numerous references online that Aquino spent 2 years in Vietnam when he has personally stated in his record states he was only there for 1 year. Well, you say, well, that doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. We're trying to find a time schedule here from him. So he was back in the United States in 1970. So from 1970, we know that he was not in Vietnam. And that's important if you're trying to track activity. So with that, I hope everybody's enjoyed this. Wait for the next installment.